I'm very happy to present Bruno Blumenthal, sorry, from Temet. He's a partner and member of the board, and he will give us a very important and probably also much needed insight into AI compliance essentials and standards. And this is such a complex topic, so I will not steal your time. Have fun, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, this will be probably the challenge to stay inside 20-25 minutes I have, because there is a lot to cover. Yeah, first I want to start with a few words about myself. I'm a cybersecurity professional. I'm in this field since now 20 years, mostly as consultant. I also was at CISO for a while. So I'll have a look at the topic about AI standards and regulations from an information security and cybersecurity perspective. And this is going to be very important throughout the talk, to just have always in mind that we are looking from this perspective on that topic. And that's also actually the key takeaway I want to give you in the end, is what does it mean, what regulation is there, and how does it affect your work. I assume that you're all somehow in the field of information security, cybersecurity, maybe data protection, and what the regulation and the standards in the field of AI are in the light of your profession. So I don't want to spend a lot of time of introduction what AI is and why we are talking about it. I think you have heard that enough the whole day and the last couple of years. So I'd like to dive into the topic of standards. When I prepared this talk, we were thinking about internally discussing about what could be interesting for cybersecurity professionals on this topic on AI, and we said, well, let's have a look what tools are available for cybersecurity professionals, what standards are there to manage the risks that might be associated with AI, with the use of AI, with building AI, and so I looked, of course, at the two main standardization organizations we usually look at, and that's on the one side is this ISO, and on the other side it's NIST. And so I want to give you a very quick overview what they're doing in this field and what kind of standards are available for you in this area. So let's start with ISO, or to be precise, it's about ISO IEC, because it's a joint technical committee that is responsible for artificial intelligence. The ISO IEC, that's the International Standardization Organization, and the International Electrotechnical Committee. And there is a joint technical committee 1, which is concerned with information technology, and they have a subcommittee 42. So I don't know why it's 42, maybe because artificial intelligence is about the life, the universe, and everything, for all who get insight. Now, the reason why I wanted to specifically point out where AI is organized at the ISO IEC organization is because it's very important to understand that this is, in the view of the standardization organization, AI is a field on its own. So you probably are all familiar with ISO IEC 27000 standards, which are actually governed by the subcommittee 27. And so AI is not something that is below or above the information security standards in the view of ISO, but on the same level. So I think that's a first important understanding you should have when we're talking about AI standards in the field of ISO IEC. This subcommittee 42 has currently a bit more than 30 standards, technical reports or technical specifications approved, which are somehow in the field of AI. Some of those are older ones, which are talking a lot about big data, and some of them are really geared towards AI and are also of a newer age. And I want to point out 5 of those standards, which I think are the most relevant for risk management and governance in regards of the usage of AI. The first one is more a general topic. It's the 27989, which is called Artificial Intelligence Concepts and Terminology. And this is a very special standard because it's actually free to download, even though it's an ISO IEC standard. And it basically just lays down concepts and terminology what is AI and what are those terms mean, what is an LLM and stuff like that, which is then used in other standards. And this standard actually gets referenced by a lot of other standards, also from other organizations. So this is essentially they essentially try to have a common denominator around the topic of AI. So this is an interesting starting point if you want to delve into AI, because what is AI is actually a topic on itself. Then we have a 42001, and for those of you who are familiar with ISO standards, 42001 is usually a management system like ISO 27001, but there are others, and they all have a similar structure. It's like a PDCA cycle, and ISO has one for the usage and the implementation of AI as well, which can help to ensure that all the relevant questions are asked and that the usage of AI is actually managed. This is especially important if you're building your own AI systems. There is a draft, the 05, which is called AI Systems Impact Assessment, which will help the implementation of the management system. And then there are two others that are from different numbering areas, but are also concerned with artificial intelligence and are also under the responsibility of the subcommittee 42. And one is governance of IT, and I think that's an interesting one, which is called governance implications of the use of artificial intelligence by organization. And this standard is actually geared toward the board of directors and the C-level. So it will help them, or it should help them, give them guidance on how they ensure that AI is in the organization used in an efficient, in an effective, but also that in an acceptable use cases. So this is something that can be important if you're talking to a C-level. It can help you in this regard. And then the last one is a guidance on risk management, which also supports the stuff. And as you can see, those standards are mostly quite recent, 22, 23, 22, 23, and that one is a draft. So there is a lot going on in this field in the standardization area, which then will be able to help you navigate this AI revolution, as it's called at this conference today. So this is ISO ISC. Then I want to have a short look at what NIST is doing in this area. NIST is, of course, very active in the AI field, and as you might know, NIST is not just a standardization organization. They do also a lot of research, and they have a lot of research going on in the AI field. They have a new organization, a AI safety research organization that is doing AI safety research, and so AI they're very active in the AI field. There's one area I wanted to point out, which I think is an interesting thing to look at, and that's the AI risk management framework. They released this January last year, and their goal is actually to advance the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of AI. So that's the goal. This document, this framework, is similar to other frameworks you might know from NIST. NIST has a lot of different frameworks. Probably the cybersecurity framework is the most well-known. But there are other frameworks, and they always have a similar structure nowadays. They always have like this concept of functions, categories, and subcategories. So it's very similar to the NIST cybersecurity framework with its functions, categories, and subcategories. In this case, we have 4 functions, and that are the functions you see over here. In the center, we have a govern function, which of course influences all the other functions. That's why it's in the center. As usual, governance is in the center of everything. And then we have like map, which is about getting the context, understanding the use of your AI systems and the AI systems you might build or use. Then to identify risks, assess them, and track them, and then measure, manage the risks that you have encountered. So this framework gives you a pointer in this direction. And as with the NIST cybersecurity frameworks, those subcategories are outcome-based, so it's a statement what kind of outcome you expect from them. So to implement this, they also have the notion of profiles. This is also similar to the cybersecurity framework. And there is one profile that has been published already by NIST. There's a second one which has been published by the State Department. The one by NIST is about generative AI systems, and it helps you actually, it gives you guidance on all those 69 subcategories, how you would apply them if you want to build or use a Gen AI system in this case. The one of the State Department has even a broader aspect because it's about how to respect human rights when using AI systems, a topic I will talk about later on again. And what they also have, which I think is very interesting, which would be sometimes also very helpful in the NIST cybersecurity framework, is they have a so-called RMF playbook, which is kind of implementation guidance, where they have guidance how to implement those 69 subcategories. So you can think about it like the management framework is a bit like an ISO 27001, and the playbook is like the 27002 with the control catalog, with the guidance, the implementation guidance. So they have a similar construct here for the risk management in AI. So that's about what I wanted to say about the standardization thing, and we also wanted to talk about emerging regulations and how those are somehow interconnected, and how they are relevant for you and your organization, or might be relevant for you and for your organization. Before I dive into the regulations, I want to talk about a concept called trustworthy AI. As you have seen in the introduction of the NIST framework, they're already talking about this trustworthy development of AI. And this is a concept and a term that is used a lot when we're talking about a regulation. And this concept is a bit vague. It's not very clear sometimes what is meant with trustworthy AI. And NIST has a definition, but there are other definitions, and sometimes they don't use the word trustworthy AI, but they think about the same things. So what does NIST think about what is a trustworthy AI? So a trustworthy AI has to fulfill certain properties. And NIST has defined those properties as following. So they have they say you need to have a base which is valid and reliable. So the AI needs to work. It needs to do what you are expecting it to do. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. So it needs to be valid and reliable. And then on top of that, they say it needs to be safe. So safe means that it should not harm people or the environment or animals or something like that. And then, of course, you have secure and resilient. So that's probably our topic. And then you have this explainable and interpretable. And explainability is always a topic that a lot of people are talking about when they're talking about AI. And for those of you who were in the talk of David Rosenthal this morning, he also already explained that the problem with explainability is that we don't really know what we mean with that. And I mean, NIST has some definitions about it, but it's also still very vague what they think. But it's somehow we need to have a good feeling that we understand why an AI comes to a certain conclusion. And then they say it should be privacy enhanced, so you should implement privacy enhancing technologies into it, like aggregation or anonymization, to protect the privacy of people. And then the last but not least on those properties is fair with harmful biases managed. So we all know about the problems with bias in AI system. So you need to manage them. You need to be sure that you have those biases managed to have a trustworthy AI. And then as an overall topic, which actually is relevant for all those properties below it, is accountable and transparent. And accountable and transparent means mainly that you need to have somebody who is accountable for the decisions made, for example, by AI. It must be clear who takes responsibility, and transparency. And transparency means here also that you are transparent about the use of AI, so that the customer or the people that are somehow influenced by the AI are actually aware that an AI is in the loop. So this is trustworthy AI, and this is why I wanted to show you that. For me, it's very important to understand is that security and resilience, the one thing we are usually taught tasked with is just one of those properties. So when we're talking about risk management in an AI context, it's much more, and it's broader than the cybersecurity and information security space. And this reflects also in the regulation space. When we're talking about global regulations, we can see that they are always thinking about this concept of trustworthy AI in some shape or form, and not about security as a sole single property inside it. So what's going on when we're talking about regulation? Regulation is usually focused on three applications of AI. The first one is automated decision making. So systems that actually do make decisions on behalf of humans in some form. So those can be screening of resumes, of CVs in a recruitment process, or determining if you're eligible for a credit or a loan, making parole decisions even, or there is predictive policing as a concept, predictive maintenance. So what we see here, automated decision making from a perspective of a regulator is always about how can this have a negative impact on individuals, on a person as such. And it's not a technical question, it's more a question on how does it influence the life of a person. Then of course we have the second part, which is everything around recognition technologies. That's facial recognition, voice recognition systems, or any other form of AI-assisted recognition system that tries to identify individual or objects, but usually the regulators are focused on how we regulate the use of AI to identify individuals in certain use cases. And the last, but not the least, is of course all the manipulative and deceptive use of AI systems. Deepfakes, voice cloning as technologies behind that, fake social media accounts that are used to manipulate the public perception, or systems that actually impersonate humans and are not transparent about that. Those are also areas where the regulators are looking into, or which are of concern for the regulators. So what kind of regulation do we have? Of course, the EU AI Act is the one that all the people are talking about. It has been approved this summer, and it will get into force or be enforceable over the next 2 years. It will be fully enforceable in 2 years, but there are certain aspects in it that are already in place earlier in the process. And I mean, that the AI Act is more than 400 pages of legalese. It's sometimes very difficult to understand what they actually mean, and as we learned from David Rosenthal this morning, even the lawyers sometimes don't understand what they have written in there. So it's very difficult to estimate what impact does it have on me as a company, or on my use of AI systems. So I think two things are important to understand about the AI Act, the idea behind it. So it has two main chapters which are important to start understanding what's behind it. That's chapter 2 and chapter 3. And I don't want to go further on like that. It has like 9 chapters or something like that. Chapter 2, and that's an interesting point, is there are certain applications and usages of AI that are outright prohibited by the AI Act. So they actually written in there, this kind of application is prohibited to bring to market in the European Union. So those are mostly around exploiting or discriminating people, manipulating or deceiving people. All those use cases you can think about are prohibited. So you're not allowed to use an AI system to for example, to impersonate the person and so that the person on the other side does not know it is interacting with an AI, for example. That's forbidden. Although the question is then what kind of AI, or what is an AI in this regard? Huh? And then the second thing is the non-targeted biometric recognition technology. So wholesale facial recognition, for example. It's not allowed in a public space to identify everybody who is moving there. but you can use it to find a certain person, for example, for law enforcement. And there are other exemptions for law enforcement. And this is also a very important thing to understand when we're talking about AI regulation. There's always this balance the regulators try to find between regulating the abusive use of AI and then still give law enforcement and the military enough room to use the technologies in their field. And sometimes they're completely exempt from the regulations, and sometimes they have a bit less regulation on that. That's also the case in the AI Act when you look into the detail. And the second important chapter is chapter 3, where they introduce actually the concept of high-risk AI systems. So you can think they defined some too high-risk AI practices, and then they say, well, and then there is an area of AI systems that are still allowed, but they are that high risk for individuals and the society, and that's an important point. That is about the individual and societal impact of AI systems, and they're high risk, and therefore we need to have additional controls. And the rest, more or less, of the AI Act is about those additional controls, more or less. So what kind of applications are that? Those are all applications that are somehow concerned with biometrics. They might fall into this area. Systems that are concerned with safeties or safety system that use AI. Any form of gatekeeper systems. Gatekeeper systems might be like the recruitment systems I mentioned, or the loan application systems. Systems that have a decision about a person that severely can impact the life of this person. And then, of course, everything around law enforcement, justice, and democracy, like in voting rights and stuff like that. So in this case, you need to have a third-party conformity assessment, and you have to basically have a risk management system in place. There are several different detailing requirements as well. And when we're looking at the cybersecurity and information security perspective, in Article 15, that one is called accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity. So they're talking about cybersecurity as well. In this one article, they're talking about cybersecurity, and they basically say your system needs to be robust against malicious attack, against all those different possible attacks like data poisoning or training data extraction or stuff like that. They mentioned a few of them, but that's basically everything that is in there when it comes to cybersecurity and as such. So that's the AI Act. So maybe not that relevant. And then there is another one, which I will just cover very, very briefly. The Council of Europe, which is an organization where Switzerland is also a member of, which is the organization that is there to uphold the European Convention on Human Rights. That's actually the goal of the Council of Europe, and that one has also a framework convention released this year about artificial intelligence in the concept of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. They call it the first ever internationally legally binding treaty in this field, but you have to know that, of course, it is now finalized by the Council, but no country has ratified it so far, so it has no actual impact currently, and if it will have any impact is very questionable, because it's not so sure that any country will in the end ratify this convention and make it into law. Because in the case it will be when it will be ratified, the nations have still to put it into a national law, so it might not have an impact. So, and the focus here is really on this human dignity and this human rights aspects, data protection, again, transparency, oversight, accountability, and safe innovation. But it has also one very big disclaimer for national security and military applications where it is not applicable, and it's even that it might get put into a national law, but will only be relevant for the government and not for the private sector. So this one will probably never have a really large impact in real life, so it's more a bit of a statement, yeah. Well, what does Switzerland do? Of course, the Swiss government is observing the space, as we are very good at observing what's going on around us, and we are not very good in being proactive in stuff like that. And so the Federal Council has stated that they want to harness the potential of AI while minimizing the risk to society, and have tasked the UVEC, or actually the BACOM is working on it, to prepare an overview of possible regulatory approaches. So it's just about the possibility and how can we approach the regulation on AI. This report should be finished by the end of the year. That's the task. It was given to them in November last year with a deadline by end of 24. So in the next couple of months, we will see something coming out of there. I personally have a guess that we will see like 5 possible outcomes in there. So one is like we can do nothing. We could implement some measures only for the government. We can establish a comprehensive overarching regulation, something like the AI Act in the EU. We might delegate the regulation to sector-specific authorities like the FINMA and the BATSL and the BAFO and all the other regulatory agencies in Switzerland. Or there will be some amendments to existing laws and regulations where we are just say how they should be applied to AI. My personal expectation is that we would probably see something like in the end, something like the second last name, the delegation to regulatory to sector-specific regulatory authorities. And how this could look like, FINMA has given us a short glimpse into that. In their annual report 23, they had a section about artificial intelligence and how they see the topic from their perspective. And they formulated the so-called supervisory expectations in the connection of AI, and that's the graph out of the report. And as you can see, they're talking about trustworthy AI in the end, because they were talking about robustness and reliability, the non-discrimination, so we don't have any biases in it. They are talking about governance and responsibility. It's a lot about accountability in the text in there, that they say it needs to be clear when you use an automated decision-making system in some decisions in the financial context, that it must be clear who takes responsibility for the decision. It cannot be the AI itself. It needs to be some officer, some form of officer responsibility in there. They talk about transparency and explainability. Again, this explainability. And as you can see, they somehow want to see from the companies in the financial industry that they are building trustworthy AI system when it comes to financial services. They also said that they will have starting talks with the companies in the financial services sector about how they are using AI, and this might lead sometime into some form of Rundschreiben, which is then something that they can enforce. But it's very unclear if it's going to be there, but at least they started thinking about it and talked about it. Well, and since my time is already nearly through, I will come to the conclusion. And my conclusion is actually a very simple one. The current AI-specific regulation on the field, like an EU AI Act, or even what's coming out of other bodies, is probably not relevant for most companies, because most companies will not build AI systems for the public or bring AI systems to the market that are falling into this high-risk bucket and need to have this trustworthiness. There are certain risk management frameworks for AI nonetheless, which are interesting for you, and you should use them, because risk management around AI should not just be driven by the regulatory field, but by your own interest as company to have risks surrounding AI in order. Existing frameworks can be extended and applied to AI. Most risk management frameworks, actually, if you're just doing your job right, even if you also in cybersecurity, if you're looking at your cybersecurity risks, then AI, it's just another technology you have to understand and you have to incorporate in your processes. It's not something completely new. And I think that's the most important thing here, is that you have to understand how an AI system works. When you were talking about data protection in the AI field, you need to understand what an AI does with the data it's trained on. You need to understand how an AI system actually ingests your data when you're using Copilot to query your data. So you need to have an understanding on AI systems, how they work. But that's actually the same thing as every new other technology you are implementing. It's the same thing we had when we went to the cloud. We needed to understand how the cloud works. We need to understand how containers works compared to other technology. So it's not really completely new and not really completely different than any other technologies. And in the end, for a cybersecurity, information security professional, the focus area remain the ones we have already. It's not new. We need to think about data protection, about privacy. We need to think about information classification, as those of you who were here for the Microsoft talk, they said that's the starting point. Umberto said it's the starting point, the assets and the classification, and that's very important. Access management, because when you're starting to ingest all the information and make it available, you should better be sure that the access management was right in the beginning. Third-party risk management is a very important part. When you start using Copilot, usually the topic is not AI, the topic is third-party risk management, and there is nothing new in there. You should do it anyway with cloud, with outsourced services. And then, of course, there are technical attacks you need to look at, but those are the ones that you should need to understand. And there are existing standards, there are existing regulations for all of those fields you need to apply, and you just need to apply them to AI as well. And it's not about the new regulations, it's just about applying what's there already, using risk management, how you should do it anyway, and then you can also use AI in a safe and acceptable way. And with that, I'm at the end.
So thank you very much, Bruno, for our very quick but cold dip into the standard world, and a very necessary, very important one, I think. We have maybe time for one question, but then I would wrap up. I mean, everyone who absolutely has to go to the coffee break, I will not keep you, but please.
So how do you establish whether the trustworthy AI principles are met? Because I would dare to say that none of these can be guaranteed for sure, at least technically. So is it mostly about compliance on paper?
I think that's one of the big problems. Most of those are kind of vague.
They are fuzzy.
Yeah, they're very fuzzy, and in the end, it's also there. It's about risk management. You have to look at them, and you have to analyze your AI based on those principles, on those properties, and see are we sure enough that we meet them. But I don't think there are no established standards yet how to measure them in a concise and repeatable way, I would say, because they are very fuzzy, and that's also the big problem with all the regulatory efforts. It stays very, very fuzzy, and even the definition when is a system an AI system is somehow fuzzy. I mean, we all think about LLMs when you're talking about AI nowadays most of the time. Then now it's Gen AI systems are as well. But there are a lot of systems where there is a lot. It's like from a simple algorithm to a AI system. It's not a black and white, it's a continuum, and when are we talking about AI and when do we need to have those properties is actually also a question you have to ask yourself.
So I'm asking because I have a GDPR compliance filled with OpenAI, and they are so far struggling to open.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. If you have any further questions, please ask Bruno afterwards.
Yeah, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be down in the area or at our booth in the reception area. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.